As the war in Gaza continues, Iran unleashed a wave of attacks on Israel over the weekend. More than 300 Iranian drones, cruise, and ballistic missiles were intercepted by Israel's powerful defense systems.
The U.S. condemning Iran's attack and vowing to keep defending Israel, but the U.S. also warning Israel not to escalate the situation. Joining us live on Zoom this evening is international affairs expert Lester Munson. Lester, thank you so much for joining us this evening. So as we mentioned there, the U.S. warning Israel not to escalate further. What do you think Israel's next move is?
Well, that's under consideration right now by Israel's National Security War Cabinet. We should note that Bibi Netanyahu, who is the prime minister of Israel, is sharing decision-making with the opposition and with the defense minister. So this is a unity government in Israel. They are dealing with a very severe situation, over 300 missiles and drones launched at Israel by Iran. This is the biggest attack on Israel proper from a foreign country in decades. So they need to be very careful now. We should note there was a international coalition that defended Israel. It was not just Israel's defense alone. The U.S., the U.K., Jordan, other countries assisted Israel in defending itself. And there is a thought in the region that Israel's response should be muted as a way to de-escalate the situation. And it's no doubt that coalition is looking at Israel and hoping, and President Biden explicitly so, that Israel's response, if anything, will be very modest. So Israel's got a real tough decision to make here in the next few days. How will it respond? Will it respond? I suspect there's going to be a response, but it will not be quite the massive strike that some are looking for. It will be a more modest one.
Okay, so with that in mind, you're not too concerned about the potential of widespread escalation, because that's something that's been very unsettling to a lot of people, just the thought of it.
Well, this conflict, which began largely on October 7th with the Hamas attack on Israeli civilians, has been expanding slowly in the last few months. So let's be clear: the escalation has happened. The conflict has gotten more complicated and has reached other countries in just the last few months. So it's very difficult to say that the conflict will stop or will somehow be constrained. That is not happening. It's a very difficult situation. The possibility for further violence in the region always exists. Notably, Hezbollah, which is arrayed just to the north of Israel in Lebanon. These are is another radical group supported by Iran, has tens of thousands of missiles pointed at Israel. So the possibility for expansion of the conflict is happening, and it could get worse in the near future, which is why there is such great concern in Washington and other capitals that are allied with Israel.
And something that's on the plate now and in Washington is sending more aid to Israel. Obviously, Ukraine is part of that question, but we know that the U.S. backs that Iron Dome battery that we saw come to the defense of Israel with all those hundreds of missiles fired as well as drones. So are we going to see more aid being sent now to Israel?
So the U.S. is providing assistance to Israel. The U.S. is Israel's biggest ally at the end of the day, despite what you've seen, some of the trouble between Biden and Netanyahu about certain decisions in Gaza. The U.S. remains a staunch supporter of Israel. The U.S. will continue providing assistance. It is very likely that Congress will vote to provide even further aid to Israel this week. Speaker Johnson in the House of Representatives has indicated that there will for sure be votes on aid to Israel. Those could be linked to aid to Ukraine or not. That is a variable that has not been figured out yet, and that could affect some of the decision making. But I would say the momentum in Congress to provide even more assistance to Israel is pretty strong.
One of the consistent concerns has been the innocent people on all sides of this and how they're being caught in the middle of all of this violence. Where do you see things going as far as they are concerned, and what needs to be done to protect them?
Well, so it's a great question, and a lot of the humanitarian concern is focused on the events in Gaza in particular. That has kind of moved to the back burner, at least in public attention, since this conflict directly between Israel and Iran erupted in the last few days. But I think world attention will return back to the Gaza question. There's been less violence in Gaza generally over the last few weeks. Israel's withdrawn a lot of troops. It's unclear if Gaza it's unclear if Israel will go into Rafah, the final remaining city in Gaza, and if it goes, when will it go, and what will that look like? A lot of these questions have not been answered. I think the Israeli government needs to take some tough decisions in the near future. So that humanitarian concern continues to exist, although it's been put a little bit on the back burner while this Iran issue has come to the forefront.
It is a good point you make, Lester. It does feel like certainly attention has been drawn away from Gaza just for the past 48 hours or so since that Iran escalation. But, you know, if Israel does decide to enter Rafah, will people know about it? Will that be a surprise move?
Well, I don't think it'll be a surprise move. It is kind of the last obvious thing for Israel to do as it looks to eliminate Hamas forces in Gaza. This is the last holdout in that area that Israel has not yet gone into. However, Israel has reduced its forces significantly in Gaza. This could be part of a regular rotation, giving troops a rest before the next conflict occurs. So it's not clear to me exactly what's going to happen in Gaza in the near future. But I think if this attack does occur, we're going to see an escalation of trouble. I'm using the wrong word when I say escalation, but we're going to see a return of diplomatic problems between the U.S. and Israel. President Biden has told Benjamin Netanyahu he's opposed to Israel going into Rafah. So there's going to be a lot more. The diplomatic situation will become much more complicated if Israel does decide to do that.
Yeah, certainly a lot of trouble surrounding the situation in general. A trending topic on social media over the weekend was World War III. A lot of people talking about the fact that that's how they're seeing things play out as far as this whole thing is concerned. Your thoughts there?
Well, it's not World War III. It's not great, the situation in the Middle East. The Middle East has always had some tensions, of course, and a lot of the issues that we're seeing come to a head in the last few days have actually been going on for months. Israel and Iran in particular have been in conflict through proxy forces actually for several years in Syria, in Iraq, and some other places. So none of this is particularly new. It does seem to be a little more pointed now. The Hamas attack on Israel 6 months ago really did kind of unleash a new and more severe version of a lot of these conflicts. But we are not at World War III. I think it's very unlikely that World War III will in fact break out. But that doesn't mean there aren't concerns. Iran is more and more closely allied with Russia. Russia is more and more closely tied with China. China's need to engage in competition with the West, with the United States in particular, is a real thing. So there's a lot to be concerned about, but I don't think we're looking at World War III anytime soon.
All right, Lester, thank you so much for joining us this evening.